Good evening, everyone, and a happy Mother's Day to all of you here, to all the mommies and the grandmommies and the babies who came out of their wombs. I, Nilima Dalmia Adhar of Ehsaas, Delhi, welcome you to another extraordinary book launch organized by the Prabha Khaitan Foundation, a non-profit organization based out of Kolkata. We are delighted to be unveiling Shobha's book, Good Innings, The Extraordinary, Ordinary Life of Lily Tharoor. And what could be a better tribute? Yes, she deserves a hand. And what could be a better tribute to Shobha's mother than to be doing this on Mother's Day? The book will be launched by the author's brother, Dr. Shashi Tharoor, along with all the Ehsaas women of Delhi. And Dr. Tharoor, who by all counts is an unmatched man of words and wit. An author, politician, former international civil servant, parliamentarian. Dr. Tharoor, it's always a pleasure to have you with us, and even more today, to be doing the honors to Shobha's book. This book is a narrative of the life of the iconic lady who has given birth to such brilliance that reflects in all three of her children. But before we begin, allow me to introduce you to the activities of our foundation. The Prabha Khaitan Foundation was founded by the late Dr. Prabha Khaitan in the 1980s. She was a trailblazer much ahead of her times, a philanthropist, an author, poet, entrepreneur, and a relentless champion for women's welfare, childcare issues, and a keen promoter of Indian art and heritage. Her vision to work for a better tomorrow drives the machinery of the organization, and its message is embodied in her iconic words, Karma hi Jeevan hai, work is life. The Prabha Khaitan Foundation is driven by its pursuits of the promotion of literature, culture, heritage, women's empowerment, and social welfare. It has scaled new heights with each of its new projects across cities in India and overseas. Every initiative is presented by our patron Sri Cement Limited, and our work is bolstered by the support and cooperation of distinguished associates, partners, collaborators, and all the distinguished Ehsaas women across the country. We have held innumerable sessions with literateurs, performing artists, musicians, and cultural aficionados. Our programs like An Author's Afternoon, The Right Circle, Aakhar, Loves, Ek Mulaqat, Sur Aur Saaz, and Chal Chitra Rangmanch are some of the branded events that we curate. We also keenly promote local crafts and the culinary heritage of the cities where the events are held. But now let's move on to the star of the evening, the author Shobha Tharoor Srinivasan. Shobha is a renowned children's author, besides being a poet, a translator, an editor, and a much sought-after voice-over expert. Shobha has undertaken voice work for several documentaries, educational programs, journalistic initiatives, and audiobooks. She's the proud author of a huge body of children's books published both in India and the United States. A former non-profit development professional, it's a new word I learned today, Shobha has spent 2 decades as an advocate and fundraiser for persons with disabilities. May I invite Shobha Tharoor and Dr. Shashi Tharoor to come up on stage. Can we have Karuna Goenka of Ehsaas, Delhi, to come up on stage to felicitate Shobha Tharoor? Will Anantmala Potar, also of Ehsaas Delhi, come on stage and felicitate Dr. Shashi Tharoor? Will Archana Dalmia please come up onto the stage? Also Ehsaas Delhi. And before we go on to unveiling the book as a grand tribute to the matriarch who has given birth to these three brilliant gems, the third one unfortunately is not here, Smita. Can I ask Dr. Shashi Tharoor to felicitate his mother with a token from our foundation? Can we have Anindita Chatterjee, Executive Trustee of Prabha Khaitan Foundation, and all the Ehsaas women of Delhi to come onto the stage for the unveiling of Good Innings, the extraordinary life, the extraordinary ordinary life of Lily Tharoor. And will Dr. Shashi Tharoor, will you please hand over the first copy of the unveiled book to your mother? I hand over the stage now to Shobha and Archana to begin the conversation that we are all eagerly awaiting. Over to you, Archana.
Mother and daughter, it's a special bond that spans the years through laughter, worry, smiles and tears. A sense of trust that can't be broken, a depth of love sometimes unspoken. A lifelong friendship built on sharing, hugs and kisses, warmth and caring. Mother and daughter, their hearts as one, a link that can never be undone. What can be a better tribute to a mother on Mother's Day? A book written by a loving daughter for a mother being launched on Mother's Day. Congratulations to Shobha for writing Good Innings, the extraordinary, ordinary life of Lily Tharoor. Thank you. Shobha, what is it about your mother that has deeply impacted you? She mentions that she never lets her children waste time. Was she very controlling?
I wouldn't consider Mummy to be controlling, no. I would consider her to be someone who felt that we could always do better. That is true, and it's been written before. She felt that everyone had in them an opportunity to do as much as they wanted, that you could reach for the stars, and you may even touch beyond that if you do. So there was always that sense that it's important to not idle your time. That is true.
How did it feel to be brought up by a mother who was so motivated and such an amazing go-getter? Did you ever feel that you had to live up to her standards?
Definitely. It's not easy to get Mum to say something is good. That is true, and she'll have to admit to that. My brother has written about it as well. But first, I wanted to start this evening, first of all, by thanking all of you for coming. I know it's Mother's Day. You may have, other items on your agenda. You've all made the time to come. I'm very, very grateful to the Prabha Khaitan Foundation, to the fact that an incredible philanthropic, activist, feminist woman start of the foundation. I mean, it's named after her. Is a humbling experience when you have that sort of mantle supporting this event. So I'm very, very grateful to that. I'm thankful to my brother, who actually just got off a plane after an international trip, seems to have injured his foot and has still managed to make it here. And of course, this book is dedicated to my mother, but it's also a dedication to mothers, to women everywhere. As Cheryl Woodan said, we hold up half the sky, and I know that all of you, your stories are in many ways in the pages of this book as well. For those of you who know Lily, you will recognize her in this book. For those of you who don't know her, I hope that the stories I've shared will inspire you to think about stories in your own life, reflect on your own the strong women in your own life. A book about a mother is not exclusive only to that mother. This book is a tribute to my mother, who's an extraordinary woman, who has inspired us, who has encouraged us, who has lived a fiercely independent life, something that I really, really respect. And so I felt prompted to sort of share something with her. Her first question when I offered her the book was, "Why have you written a book about me? What is there to say? You should have written a book about your famous brother." And I said, "No, I'm sure there'll be many who come along to do that, Mom. This book is about you because you've always been extraordinary. You have affected all of us." I have friends who've written in after seeing the cover page of this book, telling us about the many ways she walked into a room and made them all sit up, and the many ways she's encouraged them to do so many things. So, this is definitely a book that has touched, or rather the stories in this book have touched many people in many continents, in many parts of this country as well. And I'm hoping that all of you will read it, have stories to reflect on. It was written during the pandemic at a time when we didn't have a chance to really be with each other. And it, in a sense, by sharing stories, by hearing stories, it's a way to connect, for all of us to connect. So I just wanted to say that before I answered more specific questions. So
Shobha,
thank you again for this opportunity.
Shobha, I've been through the book cover to cover, and I see shades of my own mother in your mother.
Isn't that wonderful?
Yes, so I'm sure a lot of women will be able to kind of reflect on the book and feel, I'm sure there are lots of strong women who don't know about their strengths, who will be able to bring out their strengths after seeing this book or recognize them. You must have been around 10 when your father suffered his first heart attack.
No,
8?
I was 8. Okay, I was 7. You were 11.
1 month short of 8.
Okay, 1 month short of 8. That's right.
Can you relate to us how your mother determined to take on the reins of the family affairs, educated herself, and continued to honor commitments to the family? Your memories of those days, can you relate it to the audience, please?
Well, I can't. It wouldn't be fair to my father if I said she took on the reins of the home. But I think in many ways, when you face adversity, women, it's a little switch going off in your head. She recognized that perhaps she had been living a life where she was being taken care of too much, and she thought it was important for her to become a little bit more independent. She enrolled in a program to study and do her, I guess it's called junior college at that time. She decided to push us as children a little bit more to not just waste our time reading books all day like we all did, but perhaps think a little bit beyond that about the sort of talents we wanted to build up. Mummy was always independent and very, very ambitious, and that is illustrated in the book. In every city she went in, she wouldn't let anything stop her from marching us off to All India Radio, or if it was TV, it's TV, if it's media, it's media. She would say, I've got these 3 very talented children. How can you use them in this radio program? And, it's that kind of spirit is so incredible that all of us are trying very hard to do something similar for our own kids. And we did. We would always, I've related a story where she came to America. She picked up one of those, the free community magazines you have in America. Calcutta, and saw contests in it that, I was busy raising 2 children and didn't have a chance to look at it. She'd look at it and she'd tell her granddaughter, "You're such a good writer. Why don't you apply for this contest? Why don't you write a poem about your mother for Mother's Day?" And, my daughter would do it, and then she would win the prize, and then we would all go to an amusement park or something with her prize. So there was always, it didn't matter where my mother was, she was always looking to see how she could sort of improve that environment. So that was an incredible thing. And as I said, recognizing that Dad was a person with a health issue, unfortunately had his first heart attack at the age of 37 or 38, it was tough.
Yeah,
It was
very
tough.
young.
I think that sort of specter of insecurity was definitely goading some of her drive.
Your mother is a very glamorous lady even today. And I must say that I think from reading from the book, I think she wanted to push you girls into the glamour world by putting you in beauty pageants. And I think you were Miss Calcutta. You were the first infant baby on the Amul baby ad, Amul food. So, can you tell us more about those?
Well, of course, the Amal story is a story that I've read or discovered or learned from older members of the family. I was only a few months old. I think ASP Advertising at that time was doing a large campaign. They were launching their milk powder. I don't know whether we'd call it formula today, but it was a milk powder product for babies. And they went all over the country looking for what they considered the face to launch this baby powder. And then one day, I think, my brother may remember, was it Bobby's sister? No. Who was the... Sylvester da Cunha, the person in charge of the ad campaign at that time, came, met Daddy. They were working together in the advertising space in Bombay, and said, "I know you have a daughter, don't you? Can we have a look at her picture, or can we look at her?" And he did, and they did this big campaign saying 712 babies, and they picked me. So
wow.
My 15 minutes of fame at that time, I was the first Amul baby. But what's exciting about this story is that the photographer on that campaign is a very well-known director, and it's. I think my brother was once interviewed on the Amul story, and he didn't remember that detail, but I did because I've met him since. This is Shyam Benegal was the person who photographed my and it was very exciting because I bumped into it at a movie release in Berkeley, California, and my mother, of course, again, it was my mother. I would have sat at the back, seen the movie and gone home, but she said, "You've got to go and say hello to Shyam Benegal. He took your picture." Wow. So I did go up to him and I said, "Hello, Mr. Benegal, I was your Amul baby." And what was very, very moving and exciting for me is because I've been to so many places and have very often been Shashi Tharoor's sister. But the first thing Shyam Benegal said, "Oh my God, it's Chandran's daughter. I've got to take you to meet my wife." And he dragged me, gave me a big hug. I met his wife. We hung out. One of the Silicon Valley family members had invited him out for dinner. So that was the end of my conversation with him. But it was a very, very special evening for me to have Shyam Benegal remember my father with such fondness, remember those days, reflect on it. He was as excited to see me as I was to see him. So that was very special. Thank you.
And you graduated to becoming Miss Calcutta in your teenage years.
Actually,
which was Nafisa Ali. Judged the show.
No, that was the Miss Nivea contest.
Right.
Unfortunately, we were very reluctant glamour girls, but Mum enjoyed seeing her girls dressed up, and we would all be outfitted in all sorts of outfits in Calcutta growing up. And she said, you can get a PhD, but you can also do this because, if you do all of these things, it's a ticket to all kinds of opportunities. And unfortunately, we didn't buy into it, and I got a scholarship and ran away right after I became Miss Calcutta and went off to America to study. But it is true that I did do a couple of, they were called personality contests, and my mother was very sure to tell everybody that. It was not a beauty contest, it was a personality contest. And in fact, when we were on stage, especially for Miss Calcutta, I think it was Ronnie Screwvala, who I know is a very well-known media personality today. He was, I think, our moderator on stage and asked us some questions, and we were judged on how well we answered those questions, etc. The Miss Nivea was a smaller sponsored contest, and Nafisa Ali was the judge for that. She had just become Miss World, and she was, I guess, being invited.
So that was a beauty pageant, right?
It was probably another contest. I don't remember.
So the two
All I
beautiful
remember-
sisters.
Thank you.
Well, Shobha, you know, most mothers are I'm speaking generally, are fonder of their sons as most fathers are fonder of their daughters. I mean, no, Italian too. No, I had the same complaint with my mother because I thought she favored her son more than she favored me. So I want to know, how was the scene with you? Was was Shashi the favorite of your mother, or were you the favorite, or how did it go in your family?
Well, I don't know if I should say this, but Shashi will agree with me. I cannot say that he was her favorite. She sort of favored the girls more because she could take them under their wing and try to mold them the way she wanted. Shashi was 5 going on 10, unfortunately or fortunately. He had his own drive, and he was definitely daddy's boy. However, I would definitely say Shashi is her favorite now.
Yeah. Oh, well. So, like all mothers, the sons become the favorites. Am I right?
She sees in him very often her husband. She looks at him, the way he expresses himself, some of the things he says, and, you know, we all watch that. It's all the circle of life, you know. I mean, it's interesting, but so often she looks at me and she says, doesn't Shashi look like daddy now? Doesn't Shashi say things the way daddy used to? And it's sort of special. And actually, I told him the other day that coming home to Delhi to my brother does feel like going home, not because I see him at all as a fatherly person, but it feels like coming home to dad and mom. And it's very, very special. Thank you.
So you have a very close-knit family.
That we do.
And I suppose your mother is responsible for that. There are no sibling rivalries or jealousies.
Oh, no.
Though families do have that.
Right.
And so I guess your mother has been the person who's brought the closeness and knitted the family together.
Definitely. She reminds us even today of, you know, she'll tell Shashi, for instance, if one of the, you know, grandchildren or the nephews or somebody's having a birthday, as long as mummy's there, I always say, she will remind us of what to do. She will tell us when there are occasions we mustn't forget. She brings us all together. And I always say, as long as my mother is there and going to the temples for us or praying for us, or her blessing is what keeps us all together.
Wow.
I do believe that.
From a woman who could not cook to one who made and sold pickles. From a woman who could not speak English and made sure that she excelled, and she learnt it and she excelled in it. From a girl who had to wear a small puttu. Is that what it's called?
Potta.
Potta.
Bindi.
Potta.
Yeah.
To a woman who broke fashion barriers. From a girl who didn't have a passport to a woman who shared a table with Mountbatten. Your mother has traveled a long distance. Would you like to tell the audience the challenges she faced during the journey?
Sorry, what was the last part of the question?
I said, would you like to tell the audience the challenges she faced during this journey?
Well, that's what you have to read in the book. It wouldn't be fun if I did that. I'm happy to read a section from the book if you like. Would you like me to read a little bit of a chapter? Okay,
Yeah.
I can do that.
I was going to ask you to recite the poem that you've written on your on mothers, which I'm sure the audience is going to love.
Okay, I'll start with that then. I recently released a book of poetry called It's Time to Rhyme, and it's a book that's very close to my heart as well, just as my book for my mother. And I've been going to schools in Delhi and bookstores and reading from it and engaging with children. And anyway, I'm not going to tell you about this book because we're launching Good Innings. However, there is a poem in the book called Mothering. Just a little, I wouldn't call it levity, but to sort of tap into the inner child in all of you, I will read you this children's poem. 1 second. My mother wears a sari, his mother a sarong. Some mothers like a pretty skirt that's either short or long. A kaftan loose and flowing in Middle East is worn. The salwar, just like trousers, gives comfort night and morn. In Germany, some mothers wear the dirndl gracefully, with bodice, blouse and apron that falls from waist to knee. The reboso's just a piece of cloth, but worn many different ways. In Mexico, mums wrap and shade their babies from the sun's hot rays. Ethiopians cover heads and shoulders with a handmade netela. In rain or shine, most mothers have no need for an umbrella. The Navajo and Hopi use mantas in their wedding. This useful dress or blanket can make a comfy bedding. So fitted pants or dresses, kimono or culottes, with silk or frilly flounces, with sashes, bows or knots. What mothers wear don't matter, they love us just the same. And when they hold us in their arms, their clothing has no name.
Beautiful.
That poem's called Mothering.
So, I'll ask you to read an excerpt from your book, but before that, how has your relationship with your mother evolved over the years?
I think all women, as they become mothers themselves, have a very different relationship with their mother. And I think I sort of want to, it's my mother's words, pat yourself on your back, but I do want to pat myself on my back that I, as a girl, and Mummy was, I told you, she sort of favored her girls a little bit when we were all growing up. I intuitively understood, I think, some of her own insecurities that perhaps caused her to do some of the pushing, or what people call, oh, is she pushy? They use that term. And I don't like that word at all. I see it as encouragement. I see it as not being happy with the status quo. And I don't see that as necessarily a fault. So I was definitely the child that got that aspect of it better than I think the three of us. And then over the years, I'm a very fortunate woman in that I gave my mother the only granddaughter she has. So for a brief period, I would definitely say that she spent a lot more time with me than she did with the other grandchildren. I also have a son who adores his grandmother, but I think everybody thinks Ragini's the favorite, which is why in Good Innings, Ragini, of course, is a scholar and a professor and all of that, but that's not the only reason I invited her to write the epilogue. My brother has written the prologue to the book. My daughter has written the epilogue, because in many ways, she understood my mother the best. She spent the most time with my mother. She had conversations more with my mother. And I told the children the incredible stories of, I'll tell you even an example. In Calcutta, when it rains, the place gets flooded. I think it still does. But when I grew up, and Calcutta was, my favorite city, because I spent from class 5 to class 12 in Calcutta before I went off to America. And Mummy would say, we'd tell Mom, let's go and see the latest whatever movie or something. We'd go for an outing, and we'd get the car and driver, and we'd hop in the car, and it would have rained. And, my father would say, it's going to rain, the roads are going to be flooded, and she would just poo-poo him, and we'd get in the car and we'd go. And then, of course, the rain, somebody would stop the car and say, nahi, aage nahi ja sakte, it's all flooded, this and that. But if Mummy had promised us as children that we were going to see this movie, she would get out of the car, she'd hoist up her sari, she'd hold us in, and we'd go see that movie. So it's those stories that I raised my children with. I would say Mummy is she was valiant. She was a risk taker. My father would say, oh my gosh, you don't know what could have happened. There could have been an open manhole. So he would look at the things that could go wrong, but she was not thinking of any of that. So yes, she took risks, but it was all exciting. Lovely. So I told those stories to my children, so they always saw my mother as an adventurer, as an exciting grandmother. The other grandmother was also adored, but she was certainly a more conventional grandmother. Mummy was the sort of wild one with chutzpah, who used to tell my daughter, you don't have to worry about getting married and doing all of those things. You need to do, you become president of America, wow, or you do the PhD. So, that's the sort of mother she was. And that's how it evolved over the years. As a grandmother, as a mother who I could turn to occasionally for some things, but, we all have our own ways of raising our children.
Shobha, in spite of being a close-knit family, I'm sure there must have been differences or fights between you. Whose side would your mother take?
That's a good question. Well, I don't know. I think my siblings will say that I was her favorite for a very long time, partly because I didn't have the sort of verbosity that I have now, as you can see. I was, in some ways, between the devil and the deep blue sea. Now, I don't want to suggest that my brother was a devil. He wasn't. But he was the hero in the community, in the house. He was the one that everybody looked up to for everything. My sister was a very mischievous girl, and poor thing, she's not here to defend herself, and she has definitely changed over the years. But I was the good girl and the quiet one, and so in that sense, I was the easy one that Mum didn't have to worry about. Did I answer your question?
No,
whose side? So I think usually if there was a fight between my sister and me, I was definitely the one in the right. At least when she was a child. So they took my side. But that didn't necessarily mean that my sister would be punished or anything. We didn't believe in punishments, but they would tell her off, my parents, because usually she was the aggressor in an argument. We're only less than 2 years apart, so there was quite a bit of arguments and fights, as you call it, in those days.
So before we go into the rapid fire, can I request you to please read an excerpt of your book, to the audience?
Sure. So shall I read just a part of a chapter? Because it will take a long time otherwise.
Yes.
So just to tell you a little bit about this book, though, I know I see a few copies in people's hands, and I'm so glad, and I hope that all of you will pick up the book and read it, because as I said, this is a tribute to women everywhere. It's a tribute to my mother first, but it is a special book on some levels, I think. When Penguin approached me, I think they thought that the stories of my mother's life would galvanize young people into action. And I said, I'm not writing a memoir. This is going to be a book that I will present to share stories that will resonate. And as I said before, if you know Lily, they will be Lily's stories. But if you don't know her, these may be stories that cause you to reflect on your own life. So the book has been written that way. However, it is a reflection. It's a reflective book. It's a hybrid text. I've written each chapter in a very simple way. I begin with aphorisms, with quotations from well-known people that inform the direction that the chapter will take. But I've started each chapter in first person, even though the reflections are mine, of course, cobbled together with my own memories, my conversations with my mother, my conversation with my siblings, my conversation with her siblings. The first sections of each chapter reflect, in some ways, my mother's own musings. So it's written in first person, as though she's addressing you, as though she's speaking to us. The second part of the chapter is sort of the omniscient third-person narrator who then ties up the story, ties up the chapter and the story that has been introduced in each chapter. So I'm going to read to you somewhere from the middle of the book. It's chapter 5, and this is when Lily and Chandran and little Shashi are taking a ship back from London to Bombay. Moving back, moving forward is what I called the chapter. And it has a little quotation, since I've said, from Gloria Steinem. The future depends entirely on what each of us does every day. A movement is only people moving. We returned to India on the passenger ship Circassia in December 1957. It took us about 3 weeks to reach the port. The statesman had sent us back in style, and I remember the journey as a wonderful experience. We played housey on the ship. Once, when Chandran and I were playing for a large cash prize, I only had one number to win the full house. Just as another number was about to be called out, a ship steward came and insisted that I must attend to my crying baby in the cabin. I got up and rushed off to attend to my son. When I returned after settling him back to sleep, I discovered that they had already called my number and I had won the full house a long time ago. Unfortunately, the prize had gone to a later claimant. This reinforced my belief that things that need to be done had to be done in a timely way. Opportunities should not be squandered. We had to dress up in fancy clothes for meal times. The dining rooms on the ship were grand and stylish, and formal place settings were used for the guests when they came to dinner. I was quite impressed when uniformed waiters presented us engraved menu cards from which we had to select our meals. My husband and I walked on the deck and mingled with others in a grand ballroom where dancers in white tuxedos and long dresses twirled around. I wore my saris and people turned to look at me. Even though I'm a bit of a clumsy sari wearer, everyone looks beautiful in a sari. I remember there was a passenger who was an Indian Navy captain returning from an assignment in London. His name was Surendranath Kohli, and he soon became our friend. Kohli would spend time with us every day and play with Shashi often. Once, when he was carrying Shashi, our son accidentally soiled Kohli's spotless uniform. Years later, Chandran and I would share this story with our children at home. 16 years later, when Shashi was getting the University Award on St. Stephen's College Founders' Day, S.N. Kohli, who had been an alumnus of the college himself, was invited as the chief guest to distribute the awards. When Shashi went up on the stage for his award, he recalled this incident from his childhood. Admiral Kohli laughed as he shook Shashi's hands. What a wonderful coincidence it was for my husband and I to meet our old friend after all these years. Should we?
We're going to go into a rapid fire with you and, spontaneous answers to whatever. 1 word, 2 words, whatever. So that's, okay. So what would you say, in one word, what would you say differentiates you, Lily, from other mothers?
Ambitious.
Who's the one person your mother... Who's the one person your mother has become closest and most comfortable with to share things?
I would have said me, I think so. Yeah. You said 1 word, sorry.
Yeah, that's all right.
Sorry, I haven't done
That's
rapid
okay.
fire in a formal setting.
What's the craziest thing your mother has ever done?
I think that Calcutta story of hitching up a sari is crazy. There's also a story in here, but then again, that's not
That's
one
all right.
answer.
That's all right. You can tell the audience. The craziest.
What's the craziest thing you've done? Oh, God. So many crazy things. Well, I told you, she told my daughter when all the grandmothers were telling their children, study hard, do well, do school. She says, you don't need to go to school. You're doing well anyway. Why don't we go to the museum? Or, that sort of thing. And it actually paid out. My daughter had, I think, the maximum number of days off from school, and yet she was valedictorian. So maybe it works.
What are you most inquisitive about?
What makes people so positive despite disability or tragedy or pain?
If given a chance, what age would you like to be and why?
Actually, I'm thoroughly enjoying this age. In some ways, like good innings, this is my second innings. I worked in a different field and I've launched a career that's close to my heart, and touch wood, my books are resonating, so I think this is a perfect age.
Three things that make you happy or make you laugh.
I don't laugh a lot, sorry. What make me happy? I think the gurgle of my grandchildren. When I hear them laugh, it's just unbelievable. You don't realize it, but it is. It makes you feel very different.
Three things that make you angry.
I don't like unfairness. I think I don't like meanness either. Small-mindedness. That's three things.
Describe your perfect day.
A day of books, either writing them or reading them, and then maybe some really good Hollywood serials at night. Murder mysteries.
3 words that describe your mom.
Beautiful, driven, distinct.
Glamorous. One person you idolize and why?
I used to idolize my brother more than my father when I was growing up, but it seems like a pat answer.
3 things that only your mom knows about you.
Oh dear. Well, I probably got almost the worst marks in Hindi in school because I was reading other texts in the back instead of reading my Hindi textbook. But I did pass. So that's one thing.
She kept it away from your dad.
Well, she didn't. She was very sweet about it. Actually, the thing is, I think a lot of her commitment to grades was always with my brother, which sometimes is a disservice because what happens is the rest of us then just goes along and don't bother. But in all fairness to my brother, I think he saw a lot of potential in me and was always very encouraging. I think children need someone at home to sort of egg them on. I really don't think it's wrong as a parent, and I know most of us have already, there are a few young parents here perhaps. I think it's good to tell your children, you can do better, can't you? There's nothing wrong with that. If they give you a scribble, you could say, that's lovely, what is it? What have you drawn? But you don't have to present it as the greatest piece of art they've ever done. I mean, I came from India, so I have that attitude. In America, very often, because we're raised, or rather there's all these articles about parenting where they say you have to encourage your children. So children were very often encouraged into mediocrity. I unfortunately was not that kind of parent because I wasn't raised that way, and I unfortunately or fortunately took that with me. So my kids were always taught to excel because I thought it was you fulfill your own potential. If your potential is in art, that's fine. If it's in history, that's fine. It doesn't matter what the subject. But don't be happy with the minimum. Always try to work beyond that. Sorry, none of these are short answers, and I apologize.
That's all right.
I guess I don't know the rapid fire format.
Shobha, from the book that I've read, I think yours is a very traditional family. You follow traditions, you do pujas and everything. I mean, it's a very traditional family. So what tradition do you think you'd like to change?
Well, we all change. I think each generation learns from their times, as they say. My mother and father grew up, they were born in a small village. They went abroad. My father was definitely more liberal thinking because he went as a teenager to England, where a lot of his sensibilities were fashioned by Western thinking. My mother went straight from her father's house into her husband's home. So it took a while to sort of be as you would say, untraditional. However, when I say we were brought up in a traditional home, not entirely. We were brought up in our tradition was my parents believed, for instance, that we needed to be comfortable in both worlds. We were brought up in a city, but they came from the village roots. And what was incredible about it is that my father would say, one of these things I've quoted at other occasions, you need to be as comfortable eating with your fingers on a banana leaf as you are using your fork and knife correctly on a plate. And so we didn't think it was wrong to be westernized. On the other hand, we never thought it was wrong to be anything else either. So we have, and I've lived in America, but I come to India frequently. In fact, I'm here for the last 12 years. I would say I'm here at least twice a year. When my children were younger, it was harder to do. And I was also working full-time elsewhere, where we had the American draconian laws of hardly any vacation. But now I do. I come twice a year, and I see myself as a global citizen. And I think we are all in many ways, with Tom Friedman's idea of a flat world, we're all global citizens in different ways, because we all have access to different parts of the world so easily, online, on the internet, and everywhere. So I don't know necessarily. Some people would think we were not a very traditional family. My mother did a lot of jobs that some women would say only men did. My father was unwell. She orchestrated. When I got married, she's the one who set up everything, because dad wasn't involved in that. When they moved to Coimbatore after he retired, there was a lorry strike. My mother went to Bangalore. She organized getting all the furniture delivered in Coimbatore, paying people extra or whatever it is during a lorry strike to make sure that things were moved. That's pretty dramatic and dynamic. And this was, over 30 years ago. So I don't necessarily think that she subscribed to very traditional roles, no.
What is the most challenging time that you faced as a family?
Well, we were all, our father was adored. He was adored by the world, he was adored by the community, he was adored by his children. He was this larger-than-life figure on many levels. And the fact that he had multiple heart attacks was very, very hard on all of us. I still remember the time I'm very lucky, but my parents spent 5 months with me in America, in my home, in the last year of his life. I can't say that the other children who lived abroad had that benefit. They both came, my sister and my brother, to visit me in my home and to spend time with mum and dad. But I was the one who had the benefit of those 5 months. And I remember that, he would go off for walks. He always walked, even in India. But when he would go for a walk in California, if he took more than 5 minutes to do the round or whatever, he'd go for a 20-minute walk, and if it was 25 minutes or 30 minutes, I would panic and I would get in the car and go searching for him. And there were a couple of times I'd see him sitting on a park bench, and I would say, "Daddy, why are you sitting?" And he would just smile. But it was very clear that, perhaps he was having some angina, he wasn't entirely well. So that, mummy may have had a different sort of insecurity, but we always had that fear, and my brother says the same thing. Every time the phone rang late at night, it used to be something that scared him. So were we insecure about it? Yes. We were always afraid of losing our father. And he died at a very young age. He was only 63, but considering that he'd had his first heart attack at 38, we were lucky to have had him as long as we did.
Thank you very much, Shobha.
Thank you.
We'd like to give the mic to the audience.
Sure.
If any of them would like to ask any questions. No questions for Shobha?
I think Shobha's prattled on enough, isn't it? Or maybe you all want to read the book before you have a question. That's what they said. They want to read the book before they have questions. But thank you so much, everyone.
I guess.
Thank you.
So thank you very much.
Archana was chatting with Shobha about the intricacies of her life with the iconic Lily Tharoor, who I fondly call Chechi. I was reflecting on my own life with my mother, who was the polar opposite of Lily Tharoor. She was a misogynist. She hated the girl child. She only wanted to favor her boys. And in the process, there was 3 of my brothers and 4 of our sisters. And there was not a single day that I went to bed wishing that all my brothers were dead. And I have to quote Shashi, who says in his foreword, "For me, nothing can be ordinary about my mother." I think of all the messages on Mother's Day that I have read, this one is by far the best.
Oh.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's have a warm round of applause for the iconic Lily Tharoor on this memorable Mother's Day for having given birth to such accomplished superstars and being the mother who she is. On behalf of the Prabha Khaitan Foundation, I, Nilima Dalmia Adhar of Ehsaas Delhi, thank Shobha, Tharoor, Srinivasan.
Thank you so much.
Dr. Shashi Tharoor for being here today. I would also like to thank our presenter, Shri Cement Limited, and our venue partner and venue and hospitality partner, the India International Center. Ladies and gentlemen, the books are available at the counter outside. Please pick up your copy. Shobha will be happy to autograph them for you.
No, I forgot
So
to bring a
goodbye
pen.
till we meet again.
Thank you very, very much for coming.